Need motivation?
Watch a Top 10 with Believe Nation.
One of the biggest questions I get is, how do I become mentally tough? And, a lot of people say, oh, you're either born with it, or is it something that you can develop? And I'm in the camp of it's a development process. Anybody can do it. And it started for me in 7th grade. I grew up as a wrestler in Canada. And I lost my very first match. In fact, I lost almost every match after that. Wow. the entire season.
Why'd you keep going?
Yeah, I just, I'm the type of person that I don't love to be defined by those moments. It was like the 5K that I huff or the 4-mile fun run. I don't like the word fun and run together. But
either.
Yeah. How many people do you see running around smiling?
Yeah.
But for me, I don't enjoy those moments to define me, and I wanna overcome that. And so I would wake up and study the sport and show up and you always hear show up early and stay late. And I really did that. And by the time I hit my senior year, I went undefeated.
Wow.
And it's not because I had any talent. It's because I was willing to show up.
Rule number 2, do hard things.
You sent me an Instagram DM and you said, Tom, I'm gonna do 100 Ironman length triathlons in 100 days, which is crazy. And then you ended up doing 101 in 101 days, which is absolute pandemonium. Why? Why hard things?
Why hard things? Great question. I believe that without doing hard things, we will go backwards in life. We'll go backwards in the way we feel. We'll go backwards in the way our mind develops. And let's just take the pandemic, for example. When that happened, you could take a look around to your peers or colleagues or associates and say, they've experienced hard things based on what I'm observing how they're handling this right now. And then flip side of that is I could look over here and say, okay, these people have never experienced something difficult in their lives and they're really, really struggling with this. And we all struggle with different things at different times. But it was pretty obvious to me who had experienced things before and who could handle something like that. And so for me, doing hard things with intent is preparation for the unknown, because life's not easy. Life is not easy, and we all struggle with our own ways. And I truly believe that we all have to go through this life, and we all have to learn the same lessons in order to navigate it. It's like a board game, and you hit all the check marks, and you got to hit all the squares, and you're going to keep falling down the slide in Snakes and Ladders if you fail that test. And when you pass the test, you get to go up the ladder.
Rule number 3, show up.
I went to Ironman, Arizona, and I was spectating, and I have no idea what his name is, but I watched the 4th place professional. He was either 4th or 3rd come across the line. And this dude looked like you. I mean, he was yoked. And I was like, okay, you can look like an athlete and still have success in this game. And so then I just because my passion is truly like lifting and that's where I started, in wrestling and fighting and all that. And so when I saw that dude, I was like, okay, I might be able to be successful in this sport. And I just fell in love with the diversity of it and the training. And then what I learned was a lot of this is mental. And going back to my roots was was wrestling. And again, if I win or I lose, it's my fault. And I loved that. And so I just started to implement the mental side of stuff and the nutrition side of stuff. And it just became this like big challenge for me. And over time, it just escalated, and I would try one thing and I'd gain experience. And I, totally long story, but we lost everything in the economy. I used to own a mortgage company, and all of these things happened. And I remember doing my first Ironman triathlon, and I I just fell in love with it. And it was hard to have the perfect race. And again, it was like, I can do better. I can do better. I can do better. And you just keep going back to the drawing board, trying to do better. And I started working for a charity, and it was a charity in Africa. And we ended up breaking the world record for the most half Ironmans done in a year. And it was so cool because it was the hardest thing I could think of. It totally pushed me physically and mentally. And as you know, the number one question that a lot of people get, that a lot of people ask or want to know in today's day and age is like, how do I become more mentally tough? It's like, and I'm like, well, you have to show up.
Rule number 4, be consistent.
I always like to say that the secret to success is doing a lot of little things consistently over a long period of time. Like people see the headline, the 50, but they don't realize there was a decade that went into that.
Of training and building up to it?
Everything. You know, you can only get so physically fit for a challenge, and then at that point in time, your mind and your body have to come into alignment.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
Rule number 5, adapt and evolve.
I'm telling you, when mind and body come into harmony, that's when magic happens. Everybody's missing out on the magic because they quit because it's too hard. They don't allow that adaptation, right? You have to learn that the next step isn't going to kill you.
Yeah.
And it's in that next step that you learn. You adapt, you grow, you evolve. But we quit before that moment.
Rule number 6, have the experience.
How do I become more mentally tough? How do I become more mentally tough? How do I overcome the barriers? How do I climb that mountain? You cannot read about it. You cannot hear someone tell their experience from it. You have to have an experience. You have to climb the ladder. You have to experience something and feel it in order to have an experience or knowledge with it. And so if you are backed into a corner, you're beat, you're broken, and somebody says, when that happens, you can take the next step. Well, do you truly believe you can take that next step if you haven't done it? Because I'm sure in your life with what you've built, you know, momentum is a huge thing, right? Success breeds success and confidence breeds confidence. And so by actually doing, you're creating those small wins in your path, and then you can draw back on those experiences and apply them to now. You can't do that. You can't gain momentum by reading something. It's always by application.
Rule number 7, be accountable.
What was the catalyst to get you to go, I'm going to do some endurance sports? What made you do that?
It's interesting. I mean, everybody has a start to their journey, right? Yeah. And like you said, I grew up wrestling. I loved it. I gravitate towards individual sports because like, not realizing it, but looking back on what I've done, I did wrestling and then golf and then triathlon, and they're all individual sports because I love that if I win or I lose, it's my fault. And I love that accountability of it. And man, like you said, I got tooled beyond comprehension when I first started wrestling, but then I went undefeated my senior year and went on to represent Canada, which is where I grew up. And then I got married and found my beautiful bride, and we now have got 5 kids. Just celebrated 20 years of marriage. But back in the day, she was into running, and she was like, "Hey, let's go do this 4-mile fun run." And I'm like, what are you talking about? Nobody says fun. And have you ever seen a runner like going down the road smiling? No, it's impossible. Like, stop talking. And she was like, just come do it. It'll be fun. I'm like, it's Thanksgiving. I'm like, okay, I'll be the good husband. I'll go support my wife. And dude, I distinctly remember, like, I'm like, my heart's pounding. My lungs feel like they're going to explode. And I look over and these beautiful women just pushing their kids in strollers, laughing and talking, just blowing by me. And I'm like, what the hell is that like, I'm a physical specimen. Like, what is going on that this is happening in my life right now? And so it allowed me to sit back and do kind of like a mini audit on where I was physically in my life. And I had some situational depression, and I was a new father of these two beautiful girls. And I just was like trying to figure out my place. And Sunny comes up to me. It was Thanksgiving, looks right at me, and she's like, dude, you are pathetic. And I was just like, whoa, what are we talking about here? And she's like, I just signed you up for the Salt Lake City Marathon. Figure it out. And I was like, a marathon? I'm like, what's that? How far are we talking here? And she's like, well, it's 26.2 miles and it's in 4 months. and I just like, it just rocked me. And I went and did the marathon. I actually hated it. Funny story, the MMA fights were in town. I'm a huge MMA fan. They were in town that night, and I went to the stadium in Salt Lake City, and I sat down in my chair, and I'm like, I'm pissed. I had this terrible marathon experience. I'm just going to sit here and watch the show. Well, 4 hours go by, and I go to stand up to go home, and I can't.
What?
And I looked down, and my knees had swollen up to the size of cantaloupes, and I could not stand up out of my chair. And so now picture the machoest of environments.
Yeah.
And I have to get wheelchaired out of the stadium to my car and eat just the big, like the entire humble pie. I had to eat the whole thing, not a piece, the whole thing. And I got home and I was just like, F running and endurance sports. Like, this is so stupid. I'm like, I'm a wrestler. I'm a fighter. I'm a guy that goes to the weight room and does the weights. I don't care. Crazy. And I woke up the next morning and I went, I can do that better.
Did you really?
And I said, I am not going to allow that moment to define who I am. And then over time I learned, because you hear all the time, I don't run, I've got bad knees. And I was that guy. I was like, I've got bad knees. It's obvious. I got bad knees. It must have been from all the wrestling. I'm not a runner. And then I learned over educating myself and whatnot, I don't have bad knees because of running. I have bad knees because I don't run.
Right.
And I started to go down this journey of endurance, and I found the love for cycling, and I got into the Tour de France and watching it. And I had a friend that did sprint triathlon, which is the short version. And I just fell in love. I had to teach myself how to swim and buy a bike. And I just fell in love with the diversity of training. And I didn't look like everybody else, right? Like I carry more muscle.
Rule number 8, be patient.
How do you make sure that as you either go through the hard thing or put yourself through the hard thing, that you learn the right lesson?
Yeah, great example, and that category is real and it exists. What happens is a lot of people, they want to go from 0 to 100, and they fail when they try to do that. And that person that has been knocked down hard, what they do is they try to go from 0 to 100 again, and they're not ready for it. And it's about everything in between 0 to 100. And I couldn't even have conceptualized 100 without doing the 50 prior to. And I couldn't have conceptualized.
Meaning the actual 100 Ironman was precipitated by the 50, which before that was the 30 and before that the fun run and the training.
All the way back down to a 4-mile fun run, right? Because that's kind of where my endurance history started. And someone tries to skip the 4-mile fun run, skip the first half Ironman world record, skip the full, skip the 50, and they try to go all the way to 100. Well, you're not creating momentum, and you're not learning the lessons along the way to learn the key lessons that we all have to learn. And so that category needs to reassess where they are and be patient with their journey and start to learn the smaller lessons that are meaningful that get you to the bigger ones. The real test, fail in preparation. And they're not willing to do the prep phase. They're just going right to the test. They fail, and that just kills their confidence.
Rule number 9, set scary goals.
When you set a goal, it should be the most intimidating, scary, but exciting goal that you've ever set for yourself. And as you work towards it, and then when you're in the middle of it, you say to yourself, this is the hardest thing I have ever done. Mm-hmm. And then you accomplish it and you're like, yes, I did that. Mm-hmm. And now I have knowledge and experience. And you look back at what was the hardest thing and you say, I can do better.
Yeah.
And now you've gained confidence and knowledge because you decided to show up and not quit. And only then can you now conceptualize the next big goal. Because I didn't wake up and just go, you know what? Life is hard and I don't have much experience, but I'm going to go conquer 100.
Yeah.
Right. You don't go from there to there. And if you do, I guarantee you're going to fail.
Right.
Because one, you don't respect the goal and you haven't endured the process to where you gain knowledge and experience. Yeah. And so that half Ironman led me to the full Ironman world record, that led me to the consecutive, to where I then believed that I was capable physically and mentally to do a quarter of a year of 100 consecutive full distance tries, which is
unreal
sports endurance history.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is have fun.
I am pumped. We announced last night the 100 Ironmans, 100 days, 14 hours a day, 14 weeks, 14,000 miles. I am popping on the inside. And I'm also terrified because I've done the 50 and I know what the compounding effect of an Ironman a day has on the friggin' body. The thing I'm scared about is I know what that fatigue feels like. That is not a good place to be. So we're gonna do things different this time. We're gonna be real scientific about our approach. We're gonna change the way we train. We're gonna change the way we eat. We're gonna change the way we think. It's gonna be awesome. And the team that we put together gives me a lot of confidence. Makes me think that this is possible. During the announcement last night, I got asked, and I get asked this all the time, what's the training look like? And people will be surprised at how I train for these things. My longest workout right now is 90 minutes. Now I stack a bunch of workouts on top of each other, but a single, like swim, bike, run, 90 minutes. What's important is what you do with those 90 minutes. Every workout has a purpose. And for me, we coach our athletes with the SOAR philosophy. How high can you soar, right? Stress, optimize, adapt, recover. And you've got to stress your body right because you've got to teach it to adapt to be able to process lactate. Someone who's running an 8-minute mile and someone that's running a 6-minute mile, if they're at capacity, it feels the same for both athletes. The 6-minute mile athlete is just processing faster. He has taught his body how to flush out that lactic acid and to be able to keep moving at that pace. So when you're running a threshold or biking a threshold, it means that's right on the tipping point that your body's able to process and so that your legs don't give out. I say it all the time. Ironman racing is not an endurance sport. Ironman racing is a muscular endurance sport.
Ended up running the marathon, and no word of a lie, I hated every single step. Just because I was way out of my element, I'd taken on too much too early. And when I finished that race, I had some tickets. I'm a big mixed martial arts fan. And there was a local event there, and I went to the fight to the fights with my buddy, and I was so exhausted I sat down to enjoy the evening. And the fights all ended, and I went to stand up to leave, and I couldn't.
Whoa.
Both my legs and knees had swollen up so bad. So in the machoist of environments, I've got to get a wheelchair brought in,
Whoa.
and they cart me out of the stadium because I couldn't walk. And again, it was one of those moments that I wasn't going to allow that to define me. I was like, that's where my endurance journey ends, or is that where it starts, right? And so for me, that's where it starts. Everybody always says I have bad knees. And I say you have bad knees because you don't run. And because that guy right there in that stadium that couldn't get up and walk after his marathon shouldn't have gone on and did what I did. Which means also that I'm not talented or gifted. It was a process that I went through and figured it out. I was obsessed with that not being my defining moment.
If you want 10 more amazing rules from David Goggins, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Are actually the ultimate training ground for what you're going to, encounter in life. You start looking at your past very differently. Without my self-discipline, there is no David Goggins.